The past has to be rewritten over and over again, as many things that we once considered established facts are now debunked by science. However, rumors or assumptions often persist for centuries. In today's video, we want to debunk 9 falsehoods. Pyramids were not built solely by slaves. For many years, there was a myth that the Egyptian pyramids were constructed by slaves, forced into labor by a cruel pharaoh. This idea was initially spread by both Jews and Christians who opposed the Egyptian way of life, and later reinforced by Hollywood movies such as The Ten Commandments in 1956, which perpetuated the misconception for a long time. However, primarily, this idea was inspired by the Greek historian Herodotus. While researchers in this field already know that this belief has no roots in reality, public opinion is still shaped by such false assumptions, and the overwhelming majority still believes that the pyramids were the result of slave labor. In reality, well-trained and highly skilled workers were well compensated for their work in building the pyramids. This means that slaves were not involved, and most workers were treated fairly. Analysis of food remains for the workers, conducted by faunal analyst Richard Redding, revealed a significant amount of beef, sheep, and goat bones, sufficient to feed thousands of people. The majority of the bones belonged to very young males, and meat like this was reserved exclusively for the royal family, so the notion that it was wasted on slaves would be a blatant lie. We understand that meat was not as freely accessible as it is today, and most people did not have access to such luxurious meat, similar to the kind found at the pyramids. From what we can discern, even ordinary workers in this part of the world had access to such lavish meat. While there is certainly much more we could tell, this alone serves as undeniable evidence that the pyramids were not built by slaves. Cigarettes are not beneficial for health. Today, almost everyone knows that this claim does not align with reality. However, in the late 1990s, a massive scandal erupted worldwide when major tobacco companies claimed that cigarettes were not harmful to health. These companies concealed and actively withheld a significant amount of information regarding the harmful effects of cigarettes. They also launched advertising campaigns targeting audiences under the age of 21 to attract a new generation of smokers. Camel was one of the main advertising brands aimed at children. Eventually, the court ruled that all cigarette advertisements must include information stating that nicotine can be highly detrimental to health and can even lead to certain types of cancer. Although this information is widely known today, such advertising was not broadcasted on television until 2017. However, even in our present day, the tobacco industry continues to find various ways to entice uninformed consumers to purchase tobacco products. For example, cigarettes labeled as additive-free or organic are often positioned as being healthier, even though that is not the case. The reality is that cigarettes are harmful due to the combustion process, not necessarily because of the additives they contain. This is why even vaping has numerous drawbacks. Do not let companies deceive you into buying such harmful chemical substances. All these products are designed to fill the pockets of the wealthy and leave the lower class with significant health problems in the future. Thomas Edison did not invent the light bulb. The basic idea of using electricity to produce light actually belongs to English chemist Humphrey Davy, who demonstrated that electricity passing through wires emits light. However, the challenge was to find an inexpensive material that would burn brightly and last for many hours. Thomas Edison overcame this obstacle by using carbon filaments in 1879. However, nearly 40 years before that, chemist Warren de la Rue had already solved this problem by using fine threads of refractory metal sealed in a vacuum. However, his invention was largely forgotten due to the expensive use of platinum. British chemist Joseph Swan attempted to avoid costs by using carbon, but it burned out too quickly. Within a year, Edison combined carbon filaments with an improved vacuum system, thus becoming the creator of the modern light bulb. In short, Thomas Edison did not invent the light bulb. He simply made it much more cost-effective so that the average consumer could install light bulbs in their homes. It is not true that Einstein failed in mathematics. It is said that the world-renowned genius Albert Einstein suffered from learning disabilities and dyslexia at a young age. However, these rumors do not entirely correspond to reality. According to the evidence we have found, Einstein was a relatively normal child who displayed giftedness from an early age. Like most children, he could speak in full sentences when he was just 2 or 3 years old. When he received his grades at the age of 7, his mother wrote a letter to Albert's grandmother stating that he was once again the first in his class and received excellent grades. By the time Albert moved to higher grades in school, he continued to excel academically and consistently ranked as the top student in his class. However, despite being a highly capable student, he was not known for his attentiveness and often misbehaved. According to some reports, when he started school at the age of 5, he became so angry that he threw a chair at his teacher. However, it seems that his behavior changed, at least to some extent, after that incident. He was able to complete school and received very high grades in all his subjects. The rumors about his poor mathematical abilities likely stem from his biographer, who wrote about Einstein after his death. The biographer misinterpreted his school report cards and claimed that he performed poorly in mathematics and English. However, in reality, he passed both subjects with flying colors. The Great Wall of China is not visible from space. The myth that the Great Wall of China is visible from the moon dates back to 1754, as you may have noticed, several centuries before the moon landing. Therefore, ancient Chinese people could not have known about it at that time. It was only in 1969 that the crew of Apollo 12 was able to refute this claim. Alan Bean states that at such a distance from Earth and space, only clouds, snow, and water are visible. Occasionally, grassy areas of the world can also be seen. Even from the International Space Station, which is closer by over 99%, the wall is not visible to the naked eye. In 2003, Yan Liwei became the first person from China to be sent into space, much to the disappointment of his compatriots. He also reported that the wall is not visible. It was only when the American-Chinese astronaut Leroy Chiao used a 180mm lens from a height of 230 miles that he finally managed to photograph the Great Wall of China. However, even these images were debunked because the camera is clearly capable of capturing much more than the human eye. So, in its current form, it is impossible to see the Great Wall of China from space. The photograph of Loch Ness is a fake. We are all familiar with the famous 1934 photograph that was supposed to depict the Loch Ness monster. The search for Nessie is far from over, and it will continue repeatedly, with new photographs constantly appearing online. In 2012, George Edwards, who operated attractions at Loch Ness, uploaded a photograph of the alleged monster, which was hailed as one of the best Nessie photographs ever taken. The photograph appeared to show what looked like the spine of a large sea creature. However, a year later, Edwards confessed that the photograph was a hoax and the image was created using a fiberglass model made for the documentary film Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster Revealed. However, Edwards never admitted his mistake and does not believe he did anything wrong by deceiving the public. Nevertheless, that wasn't even the most recent photograph that was taken. In 2020, a photograph by a local tourist named Steve Charles went viral on the internet, causing a sensation. He didn't claim it was Nessie, but he asked on social media what kind of fish he had captured in the photo. Ronald Watson, a blogger who has studied the history of the Loch Ness Monster, discovered that Charles is involved in 3D graphics and earns a living by creating fake images like this. Steve, who has been studying Loch Ness for many years, believes that Nessie does not exist and that many sightings can likely be attributed to large fish in the lake. He says that some of these fish can grow up to 2.5 meters, making them resemble a deep water monster. Vikings did not wear horns. For the most part, many people understand that Vikings did not wear headgear with large horns protruding from them. Most people seem to acknowledge this fact, but popular culture continues to portray ancient Vikings as wild warriors wearing horns. The sources of this misconception can actually be traced back to the world of opera. In Richard Wagner's opera cycle, Der Ring der Nibelungen, the costume designer, Karl Emil Doppler, created helmets with horns for the Viking characters in the second half of the 19th century. However, this opera managed to completely change the world's perception of Vikings, leading many to believe that they actually wore horned helmets. In reality, horns would have been counterproductive in battle. If an enemy's sword struck a helmet with horns, it would likely slide downward and hit the Viking's face, which would be highly undesirable in combat. By the way, the idea that Vikings drank from the hollowed-out skulls of their enemies is also highly unlikely. In reality, it would have been much more practical for Vikings to drink from clay or wooden cups, like everyone else did. Although horn cups were used in some parts of the world, it is not a common practice associated with Vikings. Michael Jackson did not invent the moonwalk. The moonwalk is always associated with Michael Jackson. Initially, this dance move was known as the backslide, but Michael definitely gave it new life and renamed it. According to his older sister LaToya, the movement was first performed by a dancer named Jeffrey in a show called Soul Searchin', and later taught to Michael, who gave it its current name. However, there's one significant difference. During a backslide, you slide backward while it appears that you are moving forward, whereas during the moonwalk, you primarily stay in place while performing a forward-moving illusion. Nevertheless, a very similar move was invented by jazz singer Cab Calloway in the early 1930s. In 1974, David Bowie also performed versions of the moonwalk during the opening of the Aladdin Sane tour. The moonwalk was first used by Michael Jackson on March 25, 1983, during the Motown 25 show for the song Billie Jean, and it immediately became a hit among his fans. However, it is undeniable that Michael Jackson did not invent this dance move. Radiocarbon dating is not accurate. In the field of archaeology, it is difficult to discuss recent discoveries without using radiocarbon dating as a means of determining the age of an object. However, in 2018, the accuracy of this method was called into question after it was recognized that climate plays a significant role in carbon decay. Climate fluctuations can have a substantial influence on the results of such tests. Additionally, when it comes to plants, it is a known fact that they typically grow at different rates during different seasons, so using radiocarbon dating for plants would simply be impractical. The radiocarbon dating method was developed in the 1940s and is based on the principle that living organisms continuously absorb carbon through the atmosphere or food. After death, the absorption stops, and the present carbon gradually decays. In 2020, it was announced that scientists would be revisiting the methods of using radiocarbon dating. They acknowledged that some of the data they selected could be inaccurate by hundreds of years. However, it would not be far-fetched to assume that some examples could show inaccuracies of thousands of years. This dilemma, which many Christian scientists have been discussing for decades, seems to have finally gained acceptance within the scientific community, prompting a reassessment of how we use radiocarbon dating throughout history. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and turn on notifications to stay updated with new videos.